Semiotics is the study of meaning-making, the study of sign processes and meaningful communication. This includes the study of signs and sign processes, indication, designation, likeness, analogy, metaphor, symbolism, signification, and communication. Semiotics is closely related to the field of linguistics, which for its part, studies the structure and meaning of language more specifically. The semiotic tradition explores the study of signs and symbols as a significant part of communications. As different from linguistics, however, semiotics also studies non-linguistic sign systems. Semiotics is often divided into three branches: semantics, relation between signs and the things to which they refer, their signified denotator, or meaning; syntactics, relations among or between signs in formal structures; pragmatics, relation between signs and sign-using agents or interpreters. Semiotics is frequently seen as having important anthropological dimensions. For example, Umberto Eco proposes that every cultural phenomenon may be studied as communication. Some semioticians focus on the logical dimensions of the science, however, they examine areas belonging also to the life sciences, such as how organisms make predictions about, and adapt to, their semiotic niche in the world. In general, semiotic theories take signs or sign systems as their object of study. The communication of information in living organisms is covered in biosemiotics. Syntactics is the branch of semiotics that deals with the formal properties of signs and symbols. More precisely, syntactics deals with the rules that govern how words are combined to form phrases and sentences. Charles Morris adds that semantics deals with the relation of signs to their designator and the objects that they may or do denote, and pragmatics deals with the biotic aspects of semiosis, that is, with all the psychological, biological, and sociological phenomena that occur in the functioning of signs. Terminology. The term derives from the Greek sigma eta mu epsilon iota omega tau iota kappa omicron sigma semiotikos, observant of signs, and it was first used in English by Henry Stubbs in a very precise sense to denote the branch of medical science relating to the interpretation of signs. John Locke used the term semiotica in Book 4, Chapter 21 of an essay concerning human understanding. Here he explains how science may be divided into three parts, all that can fall within the compass of human understanding, being either, first, the nature of things, as they are in themselves, their relations, and their manner of operation, or, secondly, that which man himself ought to do, as a rational and voluntary agent, for the attainment of any end, especially happiness, or, thirdly, the ways and means whereby the knowledge of both the one and the other of these is attained and communicated. I think science may be divided properly into these three sorts. Locke, 1823–1963. 174. Locke then elaborates on the nature of this third category, naming it sigma eta mu epsilon iota omega tau iota kappa eta, and explaining it as the doctrine of signs in the following terms. Nor is there anything to be relied upon in physic, but an exact knowledge of medicinal physiology, semiotics, method of curing, and tried medicines. Locke, 1823–1963, 4:21.4. 175. In the 19th century, Charles Sanders Peirce defined what he termed semiotic as the quasi-necessary, or formal doctrine of signs, which abstracts what must be the characters of all signs used by an intelligence capable of learning by experience, and which is philosophical logic pursued in terms of signs and sign processes. The Peirce scholar and editor Max H. Fish claimed in 1978 that semiotic was Peirce's own preferred rendering of Locke's sigma eta mu iota omega tau iota kappa eta. Charles Morris followed Peirce in using the term semiotic, and in extending the discipline beyond human communication to animal learning and use of signals. Ferdinand de Saussure, however, founded his semiotics, which he called semiology, in the social sciences. It is possible to conceive of a science which studies the role of signs as part of social life. It would form part of social psychology, and hence a general psychology. We shall call it semiology. It would investigate the nature of signs and the laws governing them. Since it does not yet exist, one cannot say for certain that it will exist. But it has a right to exist, a place ready for it in advance. Linguistics is only one branch of this general science. The laws which semiology will discover will be laws applicable in linguistics, and linguistics will thus be assigned to a clearly defined place in the field of human knowledge. Cited in Chandler's Semiotics for Beginners, Introduction. While the Saussurean semiotic is dyadic, the Pearson semiotic is triadic, being conceived as philosophical logic studied in terms of signs that are not always linguistic or artificial. The Pearson semiotic addresses not only the external communication mechanism, as per Saussure, but the internal representation machine, investigating not just sign processes, or modes of inference, but the whole inquiry process in general. Pearson semiotics further subdivides each of the three triadic elements into three subtypes. For example, signs can be icons, indices, and symbols. Yuri Lotman introduced Eastern Europe to semiotics and adopted Locke's coinage as the name to subtitle his founding at the University of Tartu in Estonia in 1964 of the first semiotics journal. Sign Systems Studies. Thomas Sabioc assimilated semiology to semiotics as a part to a whole, and was involved in choosing the name Semiotica for the first international journal devoted to the study of signs. History. The importance of signs and signification has been recognized throughout much of the history of philosophy, and in psychology as well. Plato and Aristotle both explored the relationship between signs and the world, and Augustine considered the nature of the sign within a conventional system. These theories have had a lasting effect in Western philosophy, especially through scholastic philosophy. The general study of signs that began in Latin with Augustine culminated in Latin with the 1632 Tractatus de Signis Sir John Poinsot, and then began anew in late modernity with the attempt in 1867 by Charles Sanders Peirce to draw up a new list of categories. Peirce aimed to base his new list directly upon experience precisely as constituted by action of signs, in contrast with the list of Aristotle's categories which aim to articulate within experience the dimension of being that is independent of experience and knowable as such. Through human understanding, the estimative powers of animals interpret the environment as sense to form a meaningful world of objects. But the objects of this world consist exclusively of objects related to the animal as desirable, undesirable, or safe to ignore. In contrast to this, human understanding adds to the animal Welt a relation of self-identity within objects which transforms objects experienced into things as well as plus-zero objects. Thus, the generically animal objective world as Welt becomes a species-specifically human objective world or Lebenswelt, wherein linguistic communication, rooted in the biologically underdetermined Innenwelt of humans, makes possible the further dimension of cultural organization within the otherwise merely social organization of non-human animals whose powers of observation may deal only with directly sensible instances of objectivity. This further point, that a human culture depends upon language understood first of all not as communication, but as the biologically underdetermined aspect or feature of the human animal's Innenwelt, was originally clearly identified by Thomas A. Sabioc. Sabioc also played a central role in bringing Peirce's work to the center of the semiotic stage in the 20th century. First with his expansion of the human use of signs to include also the generically animal sign usage. Then with his further expansion of semiosis to include the vegetative world. One of Peirce's distinctions was that of distinguishing an interpretant from an interpreter. Peirce's interpretant notion opened the way to understanding an action of signs beyond the realm of animal life, which was his first advance beyond Latin Age semiotics. Other early theorists in the field of semiotics include Charles W. Morris. Max Black argued that the work of Bertrand Russell was seminal in the field. Formulations. Semioticians classify signs or sign systems in relation to the way they are transmitted. This process of carrying meaning depends on the use of codes that may be the individual sounds or letters that humans use to form words, the body movements they make to show attitude or emotion, or even something as general as the clothes they wear. To coin a word to refer to a thing, the community must agree on a simple meaning within their language. But that word can transmit that meaning only within the language's grammatical structures and codes. Codes also represent the values of the culture, and are able to add new shades of connotation to every aspect of life. To explain the relationship between semiotics and communication studies. Communication is defined as the process of transferring data and/or meaning from a source to a receiver. Hence, communication theorists construct models based on codes, media, and contexts to explain the biology, psychology, and mechanics involved. Both disciplines recognize that the technical process cannot be separated from the fact that the receiver must decode the data, i.e., be able to distinguish the data as salient, and make meaning out of it. This implies that there is a necessary overlap between semiotics and communication. Indeed, many of the concepts are shared, although in each field the emphasis is different. In Messages and Meanings, An Introduction to Semiotics, Marcel Danzy suggested that semioticians' priorities were to study signification first, and communication second. A more extreme view is offered by Jean-Jacques Natys, who, as a musicologist, considered the theoretical study of communication irrelevant to his application of semiotics. Semiotics differs from linguistics in that it generalizes the definition of a sign to encompass signs in any medium or sensory modality. Thus it broadens the range of sign systems and sign relations, and extends the definition of language in what amounts to its widest analogical or metaphorical sense. Peirce's definition of the term semiotic as the study of necessary features of signs also has the effect of distinguishing the discipline from linguistics as the study of contingent features that the world's languages happen to have acquired in the course of their evolutions. From a subjective standpoint, perhaps more difficult is the distinction between semiotics and the philosophy of language. In a sense, the difference lies between separate traditions rather than subjects. Different authors have called themselves philosopher of language or semiotician. This difference does not match the separation between analytic and continental philosophy. On a closer look, there may be found some differences regarding subjects. Philosophy of language pays more attention to natural languages or to languages in general, while semiotics is deeply concerned with non-linguistic signification. Philosophy of language also bears connections to linguistics, while semiotics might appear closer to some of the humanities and to cultural anthropology. Semiosis or semiosis is the process that forms meaning from any organism's apprehension of the world through signs. Scholars who have talked about semiosis in their sub-theories of semiotics include C.S. Peirce, John Dealey, and Umberto Eco. Cognitive semiotics is combining methods and theories developed in the disciplines of cognitive methods and theories developed in semiotics and the humanities, with providing new information into human signification and its manifestation in cultural practices. The research on cognitive semiotics brings together semiotics from linguistics, cognitive science, unrelated disciplines on a common meta-theoretical platform of concepts, methods, and shared data. Cognitive semiotics may also be seen as the study of meaning-making by employing and integrating methods and theories developed in the cognitive sciences. This involves conceptual and textual analysis as well as experimental investigations. Cognitive semiotics initially was developed at the Center for Semiotics at Aarhus University, with an important connection with the Center of Functionally Integrated Neuroscience at Aarhus Hospital. Amongst the prominent cognitive semioticians are Per Aage Brandt, Sven Ostergaard, Per Bundgaard, Fredrik Stjernfeldt, Mikkel Wallentin, Christian Tyliakuten, Ricardo Fusaroli, and Jordan Zalativ. Zalativ later in cooperation with Görans and Essen established CCS at Lund University, Sweden.